Hi, everybody. It's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and today's workshop is literally going to be on one word, and that word is and. And if you haven't ever done this, it's really an interesting thing to do as fellow coaches, fellow leaders, is to just sit and watch people talk. And I just led a workshop the other day at one of our client sites on emotional intelligence, and we're teaching them how to interpret their results. And it was really interesting. And I literally was saying, when you get your scores, a low score is not a bad score. A high score doesn't mean a great score. It's about how you use and how you understand the use or the utilization of your emotions. And people kept going, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And one of the major tenets of emotional intelligence is self-regulation. And people couldn't stop doing it. And they were getting defensive because they wanted high scores. And I kept using the word and. I said, now look at your scores and ask yourself. And over time, you could notice people were calming down. Now, if I had interjected and said, yeah, but you're not taking this the right way, I probably would have fueled some emotion, right? So one of the most common ways to use and is the dovetail technique. So when we want someone to improve in an area, what do? Well, John, you're doing really good in the following areas, but time management it continues to suffer. And we almost give this annotation or this description of why it's not working well. Whereas the dovetail technique is, John, here are the three areas that I think you really excel in: your product knowledge, your policy understanding, your procedures, your ability to work with teammates. And I think about time management becoming one of those strengths. Where do you see currently right now your strengths with time management and areas of opportunity to improve? That opens up a much more fluid door for someone's reception to feedback, openness, vulnerability. Now, the other one is something called feedback and the question. So when we give feedback, what do we typically do? We say, well, John, your use of time management is just not very good, and we really need to improve and get you some training in that area. And we tend to just let feedback sit on its own, right? So when you let feedback sit on its own, it just kind of marinates. It resonates with people. It kind of sinks in. There isn't a forward platform per se to go to that next level. Whereas if you give feedback such as, John, one of the areas where I think you have an opportunity to improve is time management. And hearing that, what do you think we could do together to raise that level? So what you do is you provide feedback, you insert the word and then you ask what I call a movement question. And what do you think we need to do? What do you think you have an opportunity to do? Where do you feel like we could? You get the idea. And is very powerful. And in between things is very powerful. And I think we've all heard this. But's the great verbal eraser. John, you're doing a great job, but if it weren't for this, blah, 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 you would have been promoted. He'll forget everything before but. Yet if I were to say, John, you're doing really good area or doing really well in the following areas, and I think about what happens is it becomes inclusive, but is very exclusive. So when you think about relationships and you think about trust, and I always go back to the power of feedback progressions. Call people into the office for the good stuff. Put a note on their desk. Send a note home. Call them into the office. Have your boss there. First of all, they freak out. It's a lot of fun. And you only praise them. You know what you're doing? You're spreading the positive gospel. And you know why? Because that person goes back to the cubicles, back to the virtual world, and they talk to teammates. And I promise you, they share it. So we can use that to our advantage. And language is so important. And let me just say this. We tend to, and I'm just going to put this in here right now. And I hope this comes off the right way. We do this all the time. And I hope I would love your feedback in the chat. As leaders, we tend to show up and throw up. We don't prepare. So the other day when I was teaching this emotional intelligence or EQI 2.0 workshop, I started to talk about the language, and we started to talk about how do you plan for your conversations. And this one woman who was just very new to the program said, "This is really weird, but I totally see why you're teaching us this." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I totally show up and throw up." Everyone started laughing. And I said, "You know what? I do too. It's a mindset, right? We have to be conscientious. especially when we're about to have a tough conversation. And we have to think about our language. And I said, just the simplicity of inserting and where we put but and write out those questions. Or if you need to give feedback, write out your feedback or at least parlay it in your mind as to how you're going to use good language. Because again, if I'm giving feedback and saying, John, you're doing pretty good in some areas, but where I'm getting frustrated, if you put an emotion after the word but, you have really put them back on their heels versus saying, here are the areas I think you're doing really well. And I think about time management becoming one of your strengths eventually. Hearing that, what do you think we could do together to facilitate that? And hopefully you hear the fluid nature of the way I do that. Now, I role play and I practice all the time. And the other day, we were also teaching a workshop on conversational skills, coaching conversational skills with a library system. And I've never seen a group of people so good at practicing and so thoughtful in the way they used language. And so one person said, boy, you hear the word and it just makes a world of difference. It just really resonated with her. So when you think about a conversation you need to have, think about feedback and your launching question. Provide the feedback and hearing that, what do you think we could do together to improve in that area? Or what could we do together to facilitate improvement? And what would you like from me that maybe you haven't gotten before? And when we're just having conversations and we need to address an area of improvement, I love the dovetail technique for one reason. It builds momentum. Sandy, you're doing really well in the following areas, A, B, and C. And I think about time management being grouped with those strengths. What's going through your mind in terms of where you have strengths with time management? And honestly, where do you think you have some gaps where you could raise your game? Notice my language. Raise your game. Gaps. I never use the words constructive or feedback. So when you hear a boss come to somebody and say, John, I need to see you in my office right away. We need to talk about a few things. That's a neutral statement. In all fairness to the leader, that's a neutral statement. Where do our minds go? They go to the negative. Uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Why? Because that's usually what happens. So if we reverse that, and then we start to couple that with really good language, the reception of feedback, the reception of coaching, the reception of our leadership dramatically increases. And it's so interesting because I have one of my most favorite things I've ever done is I built a leadership academy inside a manufacturing company. And the HR manager is a friend of mine. And we've had some tough people in there. We have people from hiding from spouses due to domestic violence. We have people who have been incarcerated, and the people are fantastic. And we had a meeting, and I'll never forget this. I was singing the praises of the group, and some of the executive team, the HR manager was kind enough to bring the executives in, and we were having a celebration lunch. And I was looking around the table, and you could see the executives all the way up to the CEO smiling like, wow, I didn't know these people were doing this. And what was so cool is someone afterwards came up to me and she said, I've never heard someone use such positive language so continuously in a presentation. I said, well, I'm rehearsed, I'm practiced, I don't know if I do it as well as I should. And she said, no. And you never once used and you never once used the word but. And I said, well, I'm kind of conditioned. It's what we teach. And do I use the word but? Of course I do. I mean, do I make that mistake? Of course I do. Yet I know that when it's something really, really important, I try to avoid showing up and throwing up, not prepared, mentally not there, not having the right mindset. If I'm having a bad day and I've got to confront someone, that's a pretty wicked combination. So it all goes back to the power of and. And if you use the dovetail technique to address an area of opportunity, if you need to give feedback and you want them to really own it, provide the feedback. And hearing that, what do you think we need to do? What that does is creates a launching pad to put the feedback reception actually into action. So think about the conversations you need to have over the next couple of weeks. Think about some of the things you need to do where you need to give feedback or you need to have a performance conversation. Think Think about the things they do well. What they do well becomes momentum builders with the word and. I'd love to add the following area to those list of strengths. Now it's inclusive, it's grouping together versus but, which is the big letdown. So when we're having these conversations, we have to be very candid with ourselves as leaders. Our language matters, our emotion matters, our body language matters. If I give someone feed like this, you're doing a pretty good job, but versus I think you're doing a really great job in the following three areas. And I think about time management becoming one of your strengths. Hearing that, there's a difference in the way people will receive not only our language, but the way we look, our body language, everything. We tend to show up and throw up. And when we just show up and throw up, we're dumping on people. May not be our intention. And all too often, we as leaders hide behind our intention. Well, I didn't mean it that way. Why it came out the wrong way. And that's okay. Yet if we really practice, the language makes the biggest difference. So before I conclude, this is a very short Wednesday workshop. So I just did a 12-minute workshop on the word and. If you are intrigued, send me an email. And I would love to have you send me an email to tim@progresscoachingleader.com. And if you're intrigued, next year, we are going to have a 2-day coaching summit at Bonnet Creek Wyndham in Orlando, Florida, right down the road from Disney. And we've got only a certain number of spots. Send me an email if you're interested. We'll send you a brochure. We'll itemize everything. It's a 2-day summit. Here's the best part. You get 1 year of training and 1 year of our Coaching Pods community at no additional charge. And we're currently providing 50% off the summit. It literally comes out to like less than $70 a month or something around there. So do me a favor, send me an email if you're intrigued. I'll send you the information. Send me an email. Just put on the subject line, 2023 Coaching Summit. I will get you the information. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. I mean, this is something that, let's be honest, we all use the word but. If we practice inserting the word and, we will notice a dramatic difference. Thanks, everybody.